You know, the way we learn languages is going through this massive transformation. It's not being rewritten in some dusty textbook, it's being rewritten in code. The leap from those old-school classrooms with rote memorization to having a robot tutor right in your pocket, it's one of the biggest shifts education has ever seen. So let's dig into how we got here and what it all means for the future of how we communicate.
I want you to think back for a second. Back to your high school language class. Remember the endless verb charts, the grammar drills, and that sinking feeling of knowing a whole lot about a language, but not actually knowing how to speak it? If that sounds painfully familiar, you should know that frustration wasn't a bug, it was a feature of a whole way of thinking about teaching.
All right, so let's start right there. In that classroom, most of us probably remember all too well. Let's talk about the old model that ran the show for decades.
So in this model, the teacher was, well, they were the star, right? The presenter at the front of the room. And your job as the student, basically to be a sponge and just absorb the textbook. The whole focus was on dissecting the language, learning its rules, its grammar. Almost like it was a science experiment, totally separate from how real people actually talk in the real world.
And you know, researcher Arya Wohl really hits the nail on the head with this. The philosophy was simple. Mistakes were bad, period. They were failures you had to eliminate. Practice wasn't about having a fun, creative conversation. It was about perfect repetition. And the result? Well, for most people, it was a total dead end. It left you with a few memorized phrases and pretty much zero ability to actually communicate.
That failure, it just wasn't sustainable. It forced a huge rethink in education, and that led to a totally new philosophy, a complete shift in what it even means to know a language in the first place.
And this is the big pivot. The whole classroom gets flipped on its head. It goes from being teacher-centered to student-centered. The teacher isn't the star presenter anymore, they're the guide by the side. And the goal? It's no longer just memorizing grammar rules. Nope, the goal is to actually use the language. That meant throwing out the dry textbooks and bringing in real-world stuff, turning the student into a doer, a creator, someone who could actually function out there.
This whole new philosophy, it really boils down to one core idea: communicative competence. Forget about acing a grammar test. The new goal was way more practical. Can you order a coffee? Can you actually hold a conversation with someone? Can you get the gist of a news report? It's a huge shift from just academic knowledge to actual real-world skill.
So, what does communication really mean here? Well, it gets broken down into three main modes. First, there's interpretive. That's just understanding what you're hearing or reading. Then you've got interpersonal. That's the back and forth, the give and take of a real chat. And finally, presentational, which is when you're speaking to an audience, like giving a short speech. To be really competent, you've got to be able to handle all three.
And this quote, this really gets to the heart of it. A language isn't just a code you decipher. It's alive. It's a living, breathing part of a culture. And this new philosophy gets that. It understands that learning a language isn't just about vocabulary. It's about connecting with the people, with the history behind the words.
Now, this focus on real-world communication and human connection, well, it created the absolute perfect launchpad for the next revolution. Enter the AI tutor. And then, seemingly overnight, a whole new generation of teachers appears. You know the names. Companies like Duolingo, Babbel, and TalkPow. They took that student-centered, communication-first philosophy and basically put it on rocket boosters, delivering it at a global scale right into the pockets of millions of people.
So what's the magic behind these apps? How do they really work? Well, it's a pretty powerful four-step loop. First, the AI figures out where you are, your skill level. Then it cooks up lessons just for you and adapts them in real time. As you go, it gives you instant feedback on everything, from your grammar to how you're pronouncing things. And then the final piece of the puzzle, gamification. You know, the points, the leaderboards, the streaks, all the little tricks that keep you hooked and coming back for more.
But is this tech the perfect solution we've all been waiting for? Well, not so fast. Like any true revolution, this is a double-edged sword. It comes with a ton of promise, but also some very real peril. On the one hand, the promise is just incredible. I mean, learning paths designed just for you, 24/7 access, and a totally safe, non-judgmental space to practice and make mistakes, it's amazing. But
And this is a big but. The other side of that sword is sharp. The very same algorithm that personalizes your lesson can also carry biases. The data it collects on you raises huge privacy flags. And then there's the now famous AI hallucination problem, where the AI just confidently makes things up. But there's an even bigger, more cultural risk we have to talk about. When a handful of big tech platforms and a few major languages start to dominate, you risk creating a kind of global monoculture. How big is this threat? Well, just look at this number. One report estimates that 90% of the world's alphabets are at risk of disappearing. And every single one that vanishes is an irreplaceable piece of human culture, lost forever.
So, all of this, it shows us that we can't just hand over the keys and let the algorithm drive. We have to be the ones in charge. Because no matter how impressive the technology gets, the future of language is, and absolutely must be, human.
Just look at this. It's a simple, personal note. It's a real message from one person to another, and it's such a powerful reminder of what language truly is. It isn't just data points and algorithms. It's connection. It's our identity. The tool we use might be artificial, but the expression, that is fundamentally 100% human. So, the answer isn't to slam the brakes on technology. That's not going to work. The only way to move forward is to be deliberate about it, to move ahead thoughtfully, ethically, and guided by some really clear principles.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. Governments are building these frameworks right now. Take Israel's Ministry of Education, for example. Their principles are basically a blueprint for how to do this right. Protect people's data, actively fight against unfair bias, be transparent and tell people when AI is being used, and, maybe most important of all, humans must always remain accountable.
And that brings us full circle, right back to the teacher. In this age of AI, their role doesn't vanish. If anything, it becomes more important than ever. They get to evolve from being just a presenter of facts to being a true guide by the side, a mentor who helps learners make sense of it all, find their own unique voice, and connect with the deeply human side of language. So, we're left with this really big question to chew on. As our machines get better and better at mastering language, what does that teach us about our own humanity? Perhaps, as they get better at handling the rules and the drills, it frees us up to focus on what they can't do. The creativity, the culture, the connection, all the things that, really make us human.